Okay, so you think you want to be a business journalist,
Yeah.
not just reporting the news, but like really digging into the economy and markets and all that.
The whole shebang.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And luckily for us, RoleCatcher has a ton of info on this exact career path. So we're going to do a deep dive into their playbook and see what it takes.
It's really crucial we talk about this too, because business journalists are so important, especially now.
Right. Because it impacts everyone.
It does. Every decision we make, like even just think about if you should buy a coffee today or like if you should buy a house, those are all decisions that are influenced by the economy.
And that's where business journalists come in. RoleCatcher uses the phrase, researches and crafts compelling articles about the economy, which sounds kind of straightforward, but there's obviously a lot more to it.
Yeah, it's way more than just numbers. It's about connecting those dots to people's lives.
It's like you're a financial detective, but also a storyteller.
Exactly. You've got to
Well,
find the story behind the numbers.
and what's interesting here is RoleCatcher really emphasizes both sides of that they talk about hard skills like research and analysis, but also the importance of communication.
Yeah, you've got to be able to explain those complex topics in a way that makes sense to everyday people.
Exactly. And speaking of reaching people, RoleCatcher is spot on in highlighting how important digital platforms and social media are these days.
Oh, absolutely. It's not enough to just write a fantastic article anymore.
Right. You've got to know how to get it in front of the right audience.
Exactly. It's like having this whole extra toolkit you need to be good at.
Totally. Though RoleCatcher does also mention more traditional skills like how to nail an interview or how to work a room at an industry event.
Yeah, those skills never go out of style, no matter the platform.
You're right about that. Now, for those of you thinking, sign me up for the long nights and crazy deadlines, RoleCatcher doesn't sugarcoat it. They actually list long working hours as a potential downside.
Yeah, it's definitely not a 9 to 5 job.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, there's potential for high earnings and travel opportunities.
Oh, yeah, and the chance to really move up in your field.
Exactly. Speaking of moving up, I love how RoleCatcher lays out the entire career path from junior journalist all the way up to editorial director. It's really helpful to see that progression.
Definitely. It's one thing to say you'll gain more responsibility, but actually seeing how the roles evolve at each stage makes it much more real.
Totally. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's talk about actually landing that first job. We all know how important tailoring your CV is, and RoleCatcher has some seriously cool tools for this.
Oh, for sure. Your CV is your first impression, and you want to make sure it's a good one.
Absolutely. And what I find super interesting is they actually have a tool that analyzes job descriptions and figures out if you have any skills gaps.
Oh, wow, that's so smart. Especially in such a competitive field like journalism, you need every advantage you can get.
Right. And they even have this AI-powered tool that helps you tailor your CV and cover letter. A&D gives you feedback on your interview practice.
Whoa, it's like having a personal coach, but it's AI.
Exactly. So for anyone listening who's serious about becoming a business journalist, this guide, paired with RoleCatcher's tools, is like the ultimate cheat code.
Totally agree. It's one thing to have information, it's another to have the tools to actually use it.
Now let's get into the nitty-gritty of what a typical day looks like for a business journalist. Because while the idea of being a financial Sherlock Holmes is exciting, we also want to give you a realistic picture of what to expect.
So we should probably start with those just starting out in their careers.
The junior journalists.
Yeah, they might not be like leading the newsroom or anything, but they're still super important.
The ones keeping everything running smoothly.
Exactly. So what does RoleCatcher say their day-to-day actually looks like?
Well, they're definitely doing a ton of research on like economic events and trends.
Oh, yeah, and fact-checking, that's got to be a big part of it at that level.
Definitely. And I'm sure they're probably attending a ton of industry events too, just to like soak it all in.
Yeah, it's like journalistic boot camp.
Totally. Does RoleCatcher give any specific examples of what this looks like in practice?
Yeah, they highlight one junior journalist who talks about how exciting it was to see their research included in a published article.
Even if it was just like a small part.
Yeah, exactly. But at that stage, it's all about learning by doing and just getting as much experience as possible.
Makes sense. Okay, so let's say you've put in the work, you've learned the ropes, now you're moving up to staff business journalist. What's different in this role?
Well, now you get to be a little more independent.
Like you're not just assisting on articles anymore.
Right. You're actually researching and writing your own pieces, conducting interviews, and maybe even attending bigger conferences.
So there's more autonomy, but also more responsibility.
Exactly. And RoleCatcher emphasizes how important it is to start building relationships with your sources at this level.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. You're not just like a name in their inbox anymore.
Exactly. You're someone they can trust to get the story right.
It's about building your reputation in the industry.
For sure.
Hmm.
And of course, your skills are getting sharper too. You're becoming a better writer, a better analyst.
Okay, so we've gone from boot camp to independent contributor. Now we're on to the veterans, the senior business journalists, what sets them apart.
Experience. They've seen it all.
They've got the battle scars to prove it.
Right. They can analyze complex economic topics like it's nothing.
And they can probably get an interview with anyone.
Pretty much. And you know what else RoleCatcher highlights at this level?
What's that?
Mentorship. Senior journalists are often mentoring the younger generation coming up.
That's so important, passing on that knowledge.
It is. And it's not something you can just teach. You have to have lived it.
Totally. And that really comes across in the example RoleCatcher uses. They describe this senior business journalist who's become like a sought-after speaker.
Yeah.
Everyone wants their opinion on stuff.
Yeah, they've earned that respect over time.
Exactly. Okay, so moving from individual contributor to leadership, the editorial manager.
Now you're thinking big picture.
Less about writing the stories, more about shaping the whole narrative.
Right. You're overseeing the editorial strategy, managing a team, making sure everything runs smoothly.
That sounds like it takes a very different skill set.
It does. You need to be a strong leader and communicator, not just a great writer.
For sure. And RoleCatcher actually gives an example of an editorial manager who successfully led their publication through a huge digital transformation.
Wow. That's impressive, especially in today's world where everything is changing so fast.
Right. You need to be able to adapt and innovate.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've talked about the editorial manager steering the ship. Now let's talk about the person who's basically building the ship.
The editorial director.
Yeah.
The editorial director, they're at the top making those big decisions.
Exactly. They need to have a clear vision for the publication. They need to really understand the business side of things, and they've got to have a deep understanding of how the media landscape is changing.
No small feat. So what does RoleCatcher highlight in their example for this role?
They talk about someone who was known for spotting new talent and creating a culture where people weren't afraid to try new things.
So it's about more than just having good ideas yourself.
Way more. It's about getting other people excited about those ideas and making sure everyone feels empowered to contribute.
That's how you build a strong team, for sure. And it actually ties into something we've been talking about throughout this whole deep dive, how important collaboration is in this field.
For sure. From those early days of fact-checking and learning the ropes to leading a team and making big decisions, it's all about working together.
Absolutely. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about the tech side of things, because RoleCatcher mentions digital fluency a lot. What skills are we actually talking about here?
Well, first of all, you got to be comfortable with data analysis. That's non-negotiable these days.
Can't just rely on press releases anymore.
Nope. You got to be able to dig into spreadsheets, databases, even use data visualization tools to find the story behind the numbers.
It's like you're part journalist, part data scientist.
Kind of. And then there's social media, which is a whole other beast.
It's not just posting your latest article and calling it a day.
Definitely not. You've got to know how to build a following, how to engage with your readers, how to use social media to find news.
And let's not forget about multimedia storytelling.
Oh, yeah, it's not just about writing anymore.
Right. You got to be comfortable with video, audio, interactive graphics, all that good stuff.
It's about making sure those financial stories come to life no matter what platform people are using.
And that actually brings up another important point that RoleCatcher makes about knowing your audience.
Oh, yeah, because one day you might be writing for experienced investors. The next day you're explaining something to someone who's just starting to learn about personal finance.
It's quite a balancing act.
It is. You've got to be accurate and informative, but also engaging and easy to understand.
Which brings us back to those core skills we talked about earlier, research analysis and communication.
Those are the foundation of everything else.
Exactly. Technology can help, but it can't replace those fundamental skills.
Totally agree. At the end of the day, a great business journalist is a storyteller, a critical thinker, and someone who can connect with people.
So for anyone listening who's feeling inspired to pursue this path, what advice would you give them?
Well, RoleCatcher is a great place to start, obviously. But beyond that, I'd say get as much experience as you can, internships, entry-level jobs, even freelance writing.
Just get your foot in the door.
Exactly. And network like crazy.
Can't stress that enough.
Attend industry events, connect with people on LinkedIn, join professional organizations. It all makes a difference.
It's all about making those connections and learning from other people in your field.
And remember, a journalism career, especially in a specialized field like business, It's a marathon, not a sprint.
So true.
Hmm.
It takes time and effort to build a successful career.
It does, but if you're passionate about it, it's so worth it.
Couldn't agree more. So to wrap things up, if you're someone who's fascinated by the world of business, if you love digging into those complex stories and explaining them in a way that everyone can understand, then a career in business journalism might be the perfect fit.
It's a challenging field for sure, but it's also incredibly rewarding.
And who knows, maybe one day you'll be the one leading the next generation of business journalists.
Now that's something to aspire to.
It definitely is. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll catch you on our next deep dive.